All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the last of 4 sprints, 2-week sprints that we've had for the winter 2025 work cycle. Specifically, we're talking about work that was done for Comet Sprint 40, Daylight Sprint 12, and Lark Sprint 15. The formal, well, what we all agreed to work as our focus for the sprint was to be able to seed some data into Lark through a CI task. For Daylight, we wanted to build interactivity between the components. And for Comet, we wanted to focus on a number of remaining bugs that had been identified in bulk racks. There were also a handful of discussions that we had regarding production stability and staging environments, and I hope that Michael and or Chrissy will talk about those after we wrap up the product demos. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to Elisa to tell us what was done for Daylight.
Thank you. Yeah, so for Daylight, actually a lot of our work was done under the hood, just refactoring and renaming our components to our previous work done on identifying shared components. But what I'm going to share now is some of the work that we did do that is visible, including a new component here called Quick Links is now available. We have another new component. This is the object carousel. So this is the beginning of actually showing that digital object associated with an object. And then just overall, we have still that connectivity where we're able to now click on things and have them go places. And so this is exciting for us because now this completes what we've identified as our 3 main pages for Daylight, which is that home page, that search results page, and now an object page. And so this then also gives us similar interactivity so that we can work with those different components. And so more work needs to happen on making these components interactive, like this sort of users terms detailed in a component. And then this facet sidebar still has some more work to be done. But yeah, very exciting stuff. We're getting further along and it's starting to feel more cohesive. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. How about you, Margaret? Can you tell us what was done for Lark?
Yeah, so this past sprint, Longshoe did some good work to get the record display working. I can't demo it for you because our Lark instances still don't have any records in them. We were kind of hoping to get some of those ingested as well this sprint, but it wasn't quite long enough to pull that off. So that'll happen soon, hopefully in the next week or so. And then we'll have a mostly functioning Lark. There was also a fair bit of kind of behind the scenes work that was done on Lark in this past sprint. We did some work, which I think I mentioned last time, to share some of the code that we have between SuperSkunk and between Lark. They're both JSON APIs. And so we were able to simplify both code bases quite a bit by moving the code into a shared place. And we also added a bunch of tests at the same time to make sure that everything's working correctly, and actually caught a few bugs through doing that. So that was good. So yeah, I think that's all I have regarding Lark right now. We're really close to being able to actually show some records, and work continues moving along.
That's great. Maybe for the next future upcoming sprints, we'll see some of that work, Margaret. Thank you. For Comet, we had a couple of tickets that were worked on. There's 2 that I want to bring up. I won't be showing you anything regarding these tickets, but I can mention that there was an issue when attaching a file set to objects. We were seeing an error that had been addressed. So we no longer see that with the importer. For bulk racks, there was also an unexpected error that was popping up with large file sets with long timeouts and spans in Honeycomb, and that's been resolved as well too. There's two things that I can show you. There was a fix for a stale thumbnail issue when we were replacing a file. The file was not actually being replaced, and that was probably a browser caching error. That's been fixed. I'll show you that. And then we also fixed an issue with the bulk racks importer, where if a CSV did not properly reference a parent collection that was being created in a CSV, it would not really tell us. It would just kind of choke and set itself to pending, but it would not give users the error or tell us that there was a problem with a missing parent collection. That's been fixed, and I'll show that to you right now. So let me share my screen. Let's see. So first, I think what I'll do is I'll share the stale file not being replaced. So I have an object here, and I click into it, and let's just say I want to replace this file set here. So if I click into it and click on edit this file set, I can now go in here, click on versions, choose a new version of this little cute kitty cat. Let's get a cute little mouse instead. I will discuss with the developers that this UI, maybe even with Elisa, this UI to me is not very intuitive for a pleasant user experience. So if you look at this Elisa versions, upload new versions, and then what? So I did, I chose a new version, and I have to upload a new version. I do before I go forward, by the way. So we can work on fixing this. So you now see that the thumbnail has been replaced by the little mouse right there nibbling away at a crunchy little peanut butter crunch. I have noted with Longshoe that although this is working, I created a ticket already to have the IIIF viewer also swap out the image with the one that I replaced it with. It's not doing that, but you'll see here at least the thumbnail has been replaced. This will be a forthcoming ticket in one of the sprints that we have coming in the next work cycle. So that is that issue. The importer replacing or actually ingesting a CSV that lacks its parent reference. I will show you now. Let's see. Let me select my CSV. Where did I put it? Let me think. Oh, I know where I put it. Never mind. Please ignore me. That's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Ignore the man behind the curtain. Okay, so I'm going to create and validate. I like that the status says it's still pending validation. Let me refresh. And it says, oh no, it failed. But at least if I go in here and I see that my objects are pending, I know there's something wrong. So I'll go immediately to the error section and I'll see that it tells me, hey, you have the parent collection missing from row, blah, 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 blah. It wasn't doing that previously. So this is going to be very helpful for users going in there and troubleshooting because this may happen on occasion. But this is great work. Thank you to the developers that focused on these two things. These were issues that bugged me a bit, but they're no longer bugs, get it? Anyway, Michael and or Chrissy, do you want to talk about anything else that was worked on in terms of discussions that had been had between the team?
Sure. Maybe both of us can chime in. I would say there's been a lot of discussions over this past sprint about environments, specifically what environments we really need and would be most helpful, and very specifically around the use of staging as a term for an environment, because staging has a very particular meaning in web development, and often for a lot of people, it has a very specific meaning of a place where you go to stage content for promotion. But in reality, that's not really the process that we're planning on using for Comet, it takes a huge amount of time for some large collections to load things into Comet itself. If it's 1,000 objects, it might take many hours to get everything in. And that isn't really what the intention is behind the staging environment. So we've been trying to get that straightened out. There's a proposal right now to reframe what we're currently calling Comet staging as a sandbox environment to more accurately describe its purpose, which is for stakeholders to have a stable version of the code base running the latest release, where they can do experimentation and in training. Also, the understanding that things within that system are not intended to be permanent and should be cleaned out on a regular basis. We've also been having some really good conversations around another ask from stakeholders is that although we have the sandbox environment, what about being able to preview or review objects and collections that have been ingested into the production environment prior to publishing them and making them publicly available in order to support things like quality assurance and ensuring that the object is built, the collection is built as expected. And so the term that right now we're talking about using for that environment is preview. And so we had a very good conversation yesterday about what it would take in terms of technical implementation to allow for the production version of Comet, where the real objects that are intended to persist, connecting that to both sort of the public production environment for end users, but also a separate preview environment so that library staff are able to take a look at that before making it available to the public. And so I think that was a really productive discussion. There's still, I think, we're trying to make sure that we are creating diagrams to confirm that everyone, that how we understand it is what everyone is asking for, and that we're all on the same page in terms of the terms we're using. But I think we have a good handle on what we're hoping to do, and seems like what is asked for is possible. So, Michael, were there other discussions beyond the environments that you feel like are important to report back on?
Nope, I think you got them all, Chrissy. I think I would just underscore the importance of these conversations. One, to like make sure that those foundational workflows for our users are like exactly what they need, and the direct impact to all of the downstream conversations that we're going to have about production readiness. Because if we make fundamental changes to environments and concept models, we don't want to have to redo all that work later. So this helps us make sure we're aligning directly on stakeholder needs and directly on translating those to like production readiness discussions.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, absolutely. The last thing, I think this may have been reported on in our last sprint review, but I'll make sure to mention it when we're talking about environments. There is also still a plan for the Surfliner team to have a demo sort of testing environment for our purposes for things like this meeting, and not be using the sandbox environment for that purpose anymore, because we understand that there really is this need for stakeholders, for users to have a really stable environment for their own testing, to make sure that things are working as expected. And that's a different need than what the development team needs. So so we're really looking at 3 separate environments for Comet. A sort of demo and testing environment for the Surfliner team, the sandbox for end users for their own testing and experimentation, and then the production environment. I think that's all that I have. Did we have any questions before we stop the recording? Or is there anything, Gabriella, else that you that we missed talking about that we should be sharing?
I don't think so. I think you did a wonderful job. Thank you for sharing all that, especially about the 3 separate environments. I actually learned something new today. I wasn't aware of the demo environment, so I appreciate your going into detail today. No
All right.
questions? Okay, then I'm going to hit the stop recording button. And if anybody has questions after I hit the stop record button, please feel free to submit it in chat and or, just talk here. I'm going to stop now.